I'm excited to introduce Mr. Carmelo McCutcheon. He is the Federal CTO for Cloudistics. Are you there, Carmelo?
Yes, I am. Very nice to meet you guys.
Great to have you on the event today. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, first, thank you, everybody. I'm glad to get your time today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Cloudistics. I don't know how many people have heard of us before, but we are an enterprise cloud converged architecture, which in layman's terms, we bring the cloud on-prem to your environment and give you the flexibility and ease of use that you'd expect from an Amazon or AWS within your data center. And what does that mean and why is that important? So when you think about what it means, right, as we've been watching, cloud has been trending up and applications have been transitioning to the cloud for the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years. But I would say the velocity of that is dynamically increasing ever so much every day. And the things we were used to from kind of what got us here to this point, the legacy environments, the EMC, Cisco's, and VMware's of the world, they've been on a steady declining pace over time, and they're kind of going away. And there's a new expectation in our world as, you know, providers of IT to our business units or companies that we work for, that it should be instant, that it should be easy, and that we shouldn't need the things that we used to use that were very complicated to get here. And that complexity has drove the opportunity for the cloud to be so prevalent. So coming back to why Cloudistics or what is Cloudistics, and I mentioned that we're an on-prem cloud. Right? We all know about converged infrastructure. That's what got us and started. That's what got us here and kind of started the revolution of the virtualized environment. And the things I remember the most are things like VCE, FlexPods with NetApp and Cisco, Dell solutions with EMC, vSpecs, whatever you want to call them, where I had the idea of incremental scale where I added resources when I needed to, but they were extremely hard and complex to support. And then we saw things like hyperconverged in 2012. And, you know, I have to hand it to Nutanix on this because they really changed our industry and drove simplicity, and they squeezed the middle. And what I mean by squeeze the middle is they took that storage problem, that SAN with replication and complication, and they eliminated it and they removed it from the conversation. And then other people followed suit, like SimpliVity and EMC. And they really gave customers, and very specifically a certain type of administrator in the customer, right, the virtual admin, the VMware administrator, they gave him a lot of control, and they made it extremely easy to use, which was amazing. And then from there, we saw public cloud that's been on the rise for a long time, kind of encroaching on this space, whether it was hyperconverged or converged. And now you look at where Cloudistics fits, and we bring that public cloud ease of use and simplicity, and very, quick to deploy, very automated in the deployment capabilities. We bring that within your data center for the applications that just don't fit in the cloud, because there are things that do belong in the cloud and there are things that don't. But for the things that don't belong in the cloud, people still want that experience. But those types of applications, and a perfect example would be like an enterprise data lake behind a Splunk or some Hadoop-based analytic that's using MapReduce. In those environments, storage, compute, network, they scale differently. So you need something that has incremental scale that you can turn that knob on. And we bring that to bear with that control, ease of use, and simple management that you expect if I had all three solutions in one thing within the data center. And that's what Cloudistics is, and that's what we bring to the table. So what does that mean? In our world, we have this concept of tenants, and we have a lot of different capabilities. The first thing I'm going to talk about is what started our company, which is our software-defined network capability, tightly coupled with our network virtualization capability. And we believe as a company, and we learned this from the cloud, that if you can't control the network, you can't control tenancy, and you can't enable an application-first-based strategy. From there, we also created a software-defined storage capability that we've built. And the biggest difference between us and a lot of our competitors is that our software-defined storage capability protects your data with resiliency instead of replication. And what that really means is when I buy raw storage in the storage block that we would offer a customer, I get 70% of my storage as usable, configured, storage before deduping compression. When you look at software-defined storage capabilities, at best you get about 40 to 44% because they have to replicate your data and keep it 2 or 3 times before it becomes an effective usable data capability. So that's what really separates us with our software-defined storage capability. When you go from there, we have our hypervisor, which is KVM-based, and we've done a lot of work there to tightly couple our KVM hypervisor, which is our Spark hypervisor, to our software-defined network capability. We actually have kernel modules in both places to tightly couple the tool so you can get application-level network virtualization and mobility. And then that's all controlled and managed through our SaaS portal or our Ignite user interface. And you use that interface to quickly deploy pre-configured applications right out of our marketplace across all of our platforms that start with Blaze, which is our Enterprise Edition. Then they go to Flare, which is our SMB Robo Optimized Edition. And what that really means is we can go from the edge to the data center, and everything can be managed through this single pane of glass, which again is our Ignite user interface. Now, I've talked a lot about our platform, and I've learned, and through time, this is really important, that slides are not worth a lot without really seeing the product and putting your hands on it. So now I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to give you guys a live demo of Ignite. So we have a virtual lab environment that I use all the time to show our customers what we do. So our customers go to a URL, and this URL is your gateway to the platform. Please understand the platform is still deployed within your data center, even though it's managed through a SaaS portal that lives in the cloud. And the idea is all your infrastructure calls home to the SaaS portal, but the SaaS portal is completely decoupled from the infrastructure, so your management pane is independent. You log into your management pane, and the first thing you see is your dashboard. So when I log into my dashboard, yes?
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing your screen. I want to make sure the audience can see what you're showing.
I forgot to hit the play button. Is it working now?
There we go. I see it. Yep. Thank you.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I am using a Mac, so that's probably my problem. But with that, when you log into our portal, we have a concept of zones. The first thing, think of a zone as a fence, right? I actually have the ability from a tenancy perspective in our world to create physical isolation of resources before I do logical separation of those resources. And that's directly represented here in our AOC prod zone or in our AOC DR zone. And you'll notice that I have a bunch of computers provisioned to the zone. Like if I click on the AOC prod zone, I can go to resources and connectivity, and I'll see that I provisioned 8 compute nodes from a compute block and made all those resources available that so I could logically provision those to a virtual data center. And a virtual data center here is just a virtual aggregation point of the resources. So when people use our capability, first you create your physical fence around the equipment that you want to allocate, and then you turn around and you create a virtual aggregation point, a virtual data center, and you provision the physical resources that you want to be allocated to that VDC. From a user perspective, if I'm deploying an application, I would go in here and I would say I want to create my VDC. And let's just say I call him Carmelo's demo. And I would turn around and pick the resources I want to allocate from the physical locations that I have provisioned hardware at. And the cool thing about having the SaaS portal in the cloud is that all your locations, all the places you as a customer would deploy our infrastructure, all call home to the SaaS portal, and they give you a single pane of glass to do multi-site management and deployment of your applications. So I would go in here and take resources from my AOC DR migration zone. So let's say I take 100 cores, and in my prod environment, I take 200 cores because it's production and I want better resources there. I give myself 200 gigs of RAM and 100 gig of RAM. I decide I want 2 terabytes on each side so I could replicate to each other. And I say create a virtual data center. I've now created a virtual aggregation point that I could deploy applications within. And then from there, I can use this virtual data center. And actually, let me go up here and click on it this way. And I can look at all the resources that I provisioned. I can even look at the past performance of those resources all the way back to a year. And right now I haven't provisioned an app yet, so I don't have a lot of data here to collect. But if I go to somewhere like this virtual data center where I've had a lot of apps running over time, you can see a lot of different points of your application that we monitor. And what I mean by that is I can show you, let's say I go back a month or 3 months. I can show you every aspect of utilization of your applications over that point in time. So then you guys can start trending performance, trending utilization, managing the resources you need more efficiently. And another cool thing about our capability as a platform is that when you create these virtual data centers, you can over-provision the resources. So when you see that you have underutilized assets like this, you can reclaim those resources just by creating new VDCs, making VDCs smaller, and you can drive up physical utilization of your assets. Because in our world, and kind of part of our vision as a company is we want to democratize that data center. And we want it to be just commodity things that you either add new, replace because of utilization or lifespan. You really shouldn't care anymore about the hardware. It's all done in software. And you'll also notice I haven't shown you anything about hardware. But in our platform, when you procure it from us, whether you get it as a service because it's going to be delivered in an O&M model for cloud consumption capabilities, or capital expenditure where people buy it for 3 years or buy it with 3 years of warranty or 5 years of warranty. The idea is you never actually manage that hardware. The management of the hardware or of the storage or of the compute is all done in software. And I'll actually go here and I'll show you this is the only tab we have on hardware. And the cool thing about this is because we control every piece that's in the solution, whether it's the switches, whether it's the compute blocks or the storage blocks, we know everything about it. And when you think about single pane of glass management, I've been doing this for over 20 years. And I heard this story and this song and dance so many times it's not funny. But I came to this company because a peer of mine, Trinity, he really spent a lot of time and diligence as they built this product before I got here. And he created the utopia. In my world, I can connect to the console of a server right out of this UI. I can turn around and I can look at what the storage is doing. I can do the same thing. I can connect to the console of a storage array if I'm troubleshooting it. And you guys are like, yeah, I can do that with anything. Like if it's a Dell server, I can use OpenManage. I can do stuff like that. In our world, I can also go up here and I could say, I want to create a virtual network in that same UI. And I want to go and define it. I want to give it a name. I want to give it an address space. I want to decide how big that subnet's going to be. I'm going to tell it what default gateway I want it to have because our solution uses things like dynamic routing protocols, very specifically BGP. So when I go into this user interface, I don't need to log into switches and do show running config and do config T and all those things that we all know. I mean, I've been doing Cisco a long time. It's got me where I'm at today. But I don't have to do that anymore. I get to go to a web form and just decide what I want, decide what functions I want to use. So what I mean by functions is we have some internal capabilities within our platform like distributed firewalls, dynamic DNS, DHCP that are considered network function virtualization points that we offer to our customers. Or I can bring in third parties like solutions from Palo Alto or Forescout, and I can go down here and just create a network. And using things like OpenFlow and CrossFlow and our proprietary capabilities, which is tied to AON, which is our adaptive overlay network capability. I talked about it a little bit. It's what does network virtualization. I can provision a network in a few seconds and just hit create and go. And I never have to log into a switch. I never have to go do MLACs. I never have to do VLAN trunking or tagging. And it will just go out there and do everything for me on my behalf as an administrator of a platform, same way I would in the cloud. And an example would be like when I use Microsoft Azure, because I use that today because we burst to Microsoft Azure. I go in there and I create a virtual network. I don't configure switches. I don't do anything like that. I just decide the subnet I want. I create it. I create VMs, and I put it on it. And that brings me to the next step. If you want to deploy an application in our world, you could go into our global marketplace that all of our customers have access to. And we have a lot of technology alliance partners like Splunk, Docker, Cloudera, IBM Big Insights, which is this data adapt template here. And as a customer, you can select which application you want, just like you would on your phone. So imagine I had my iPhone in my data center, And I said, I need to download Splunk to ingest 10 terabytes of data. In our world, I can literally do that. I go here, I click download. I, call it, let's say Carmelo, just to give it a unique name, because we do these demos all the time as a group at my company for our customers or potential customers. And it downloads to a local template store, which resides on the storage capability you get with the platform when you bring it into your data center. And then you decide, I want to create a VM. And the coolest thing about creating a VM in our world is that when you go to create this VM, this is where you decide where you put it, where it's going to run, what type of resources you provision it. And from what I've seen, and being here for almost 2 years, and then before that, I've spent a lot of time in the VMware world and in the Hyper-V world, and it was never this easy. I give my VM a unique name. I decide what virtual data center that I've created based off of the resources I provision from whatever physical sites or multiple sites that I've deployed Cloudistics in, and we'll call it Carmelo's demo. If I want to group an application, so there's this concept that we've run into that's becoming more of a standard instead of a shiny snowflake, which is this concept of a multi-tiered app. And what that really means, and the perfect example of this meaning is SharePoint. It is an application that is formed through multiple components that run together to create the capability that your users will consume whatever it is you're providing them from. And SharePoint's an example where I may have a SQL server, multiple IIS servers, and it's a multi-tiered app. So I got IIS and I got SQL, but I want to group that and I want to manage that as one autonomous unit because that's how the rest of the business looks at that application, right? If I go to a business owner, he doesn't talk about IIS. He talks about a SharePoint library and how he puts data in there. In our world, we give you a way to manage those applications the way that the consumers of those applications think. So I could create a new application group. I could leverage an existing. I could say how many of an instance I want. I could decide where I want to consume storage from, so what site, what pool of storage. I can select that physical zone, which gives me a physical boundary and controls where I put that. I can decide to put it on a virtual network. I can select which virtual network I want. I can use some of our network function virtualization capabilities. So one of those would be a distributed firewall, and if I have any application-specific firewall rules, I can select those at the time that I create a VM. And then I can just hit create instance and go, and it'll go create my VM for me. And it'll log into the storage. It'll provision whatever block capability I need for that virtual disk that's tied to the VM. It'll talk to the hypervisor and pick the right one with the available resources that meet my memory and CPU requirements that I selected. And I can do all this within a click. And if you think about what that really means, and we all have smartphones today, right? Our infrastructure that's in your data center is your phone. Our marketplace is your app store, and you as a user are using our iTunes interface here to deploy your enterprise-wide applications quicker and simpler than you ever have in the past with on-prem infrastructure, but more akin to a cloud experience. And the other really cool thing is you're not worried about upgrading your infrastructure or managing those physical assets anymore, which is also akin to the cloud. And our goal and our belief and why we're here as a company is that just because you're in your own data center, it does not mean you need to compromise your user experience. And we're really here to make sure that you have that user experience that has become so popular from cloud providers within your data center for the apps that you've decided are either too important because of data locality, too important because of the performance requirements, or more persistent in nature, that you have the same experience. So you can manage these things the same way you would applications in the cloud. And that's kind of what our belief is as a company. I've shown you guys a lot about our product. And I'm curious, do you guys have any questions? And if we could go into the Q&A phase, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great presentation. Carmelo, I love to see the live demo. I love to see the product in action. We do have some questions for you here from the audience. So while we do that, I'm going to go ahead and pop up this poll question on the screen, unless you wanted to show something else in the interface.
No, I'm going to stop sharing right now, and we can move on to the questions.
Okay. So I've got on the screen right now a question. It says, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the Cloudistics on-premises enterprise cloud solution? I'm just going to leave that up there for everyone out there in the audience to answer while we do the Q&A. So the first question here that came in is just kind of some clarification on, so is Cloudistics hardware or software or both?
So that's a good question. So for our customers today, it is both. We tightly couple our software with Dell or other vendors' equipment from a hardware perspective to deliver the on-prem cloud capability. So it is both.
Okay. And Mike here, he's asking, if I deploy Cloudistics, like what shows up in the data center? Do I just plug it into my traditional network? Does it need storage? Does it have its own storage?
Oh, that's awesome. So there's only two things you need as a consumer of Cloudistics. We need a place to plug our stuff into within the rack that you rack it in. And then from there, because we provide the switches, the storage, and the compute, and all the software you need, we literally just need a place to take our switches and uplink them to within your environment so they can call home to our SaaS portal, but also access the rest of your network. So you will not need anything extra, and you will not need to use any legacy assets like old storage or reprovisioning or anything like that to enable our solution within the data center.
So it's compute, it's got storage, it's got networking. Just connect it to the network, give it some IP addresses and a password, and it's a fully deployed, software-defined data center ready to go. Is that kind of the gist of it?
You're spot on, man. And it's funny because you see it, but we actually one of the bigger I call them recommenders of solutions in the marketplace, IDC. They're actually quoted as saying we're the first people to ever deliver on that software-defined data center promise that other vendors have been talking about because of the way we've done it and the fact that you are getting everything, hardware and software included within your data center.
Okay. And Brett is asking, can a developer configure their own machines with a software stack for themselves within the constraints set by the IT admin?
Yeah. So the coolest thing about our platform is if I'm a developer and I need resources, I go to the IT admin and I say, I need resources. And in the normal world, you have to go figure out what those are. You may have to buy them, all that good stuff. In our world, he gets a virtual data center, and he says, I need X number of core, X number of memory, and whatever storage capacity he needs, and he creates his apps and he goes. And it's as easy as I did in the demo, right? Either that developer can do it if he has the right rights within the platform, or the IT administrator can do it on his behalf. But once he gets his virtual data center, he can do whatever he needs to, and he doesn't need help, and he doesn't have to wait for people to provision stuff on his behalf, which takes weeks, if not months, depending on the environment you're in. It's very instantaneous and easy.
Very nice. And then another question here is about, can I run containers on Cloudistics?
Oh, wow. I haven't had that question in a while. So it's really cool. I've been with Cloudistics for about 2 years, and one of the first integration points we did with a third-party piece of software was Docker. And we were the first people from an infrastructure perspective within the data center to create a persistent storage driver. And because we did that almost 2 years ago, you can run containers on our platform, and you can use tools like Kubernetes or Swarm to move those containers around within our platform, but also to move those from our platform to other places like Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, or Amazon. So we totally support containers. We support orchestration of containers, and then we support movement of containers between our platform and others.
Okay. And another question, is there anything in Cloudistics to help with compliance?
Oh, that's a really good question too. So there's a couple of things. We have 2 different editions of our solution. The first edition is based off of CentOS, and that solution carries things like OpenScape, hardening requirements at the operating system level. We do pen testing and things of that nature to our entire solution. We support things like syslogs so you can validate all the things that we've done and of the applications you run. And then we also have a Guardian edition of our product that's powered by Red Hat that includes the extra things you want when you're in a compliancy mode, like common criteria, which is a prerequisite for HIPAA, PCI, and also FIDC type regulations. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is we have 2 different flavors of our ice cream, and depending on what regulation you're complying to, you would just select from the menu of what you want, and you'd get everything you need. And then we support third-party audit through syslogs, so then you can validate and get forensical evidence on the controls that we implement in our solution.
Okay. And Tim, I'm hearing some background noise. Could you mute? I'm sorry. And Carmelo, another question here is about use cases. Like, what are some of the use cases you're seeing Cloudistics, give companies, a lot of benefit in their data center?
Good question. The first one I'll talk about is log analytics. We've partnered with a lot of SIMs like Splunk, Logarithm, and others, and they use our platform to create an automated cloud-like experience to ingest logs and analyze them, because we have optimizations in the network and also in the storage stack to enable performance that most people can't achieve unless they do bare metal. But they don't want the headache of managing the bare metal environment. They want the ease of use of a cloud. That's the first area. The second area has been Microsoft workloads, and very specifically VDI. We support a VDI solution that is Microsoft enabled directly. We don't have to use third-party capabilities like Citrix or VMware View. And that's another big use case that's become very popular for us, because in our world, every VDI session can be a persistent session, which means you can log what happens in the session, but also means that the user of that session, the VDI consumer, gets a personal experience where they get admin rights, which is the utopia of VDI, but you don't have to sacrifice cost of performance to enable that capability. So VDI is another one. The third one are like big data applications, so things that are Hadoop-based or Spark-based, those large analytical applications, because we're an all-flash storage capability. Our hypervisor is KVM. We utilize Broadwell and Skylake CPUs, and we're very dense. And an example of density would be in 6U, I can get up to 224, Broadwell or Skylake cores. I can get almost 8 terabytes of memory. I could get a petabyte of flash. And in that environment in 6U, I could run 500 or 600 VMs that power a distributed application. So think like big data, data science-like workloads. And then there's your general purpose workloads. Like I want to do a LAMP stack, or I need to run NoSQL, or I have SharePoint, or I have an IaaS environment I'm deploying. So there are a lot of things you can do on us. Initially, as a platform, we focused on the harder, more complicated applications because we could use our SaaS portal and our automation capabilities to simplify those. And then when we did that, we started adding all the other things you need to run general purpose workloads. And now we can run just about anything, but those are some of the big use cases that we've had a lot of popularity and repeatability with so far in the marketplace.
Okay. And a question came in here. So is Cloudistics only or best used for greenfield deployment? And I would say no, because you all could say someone had an aging virtual infrastructure with an aging SAN. Their end user license agreement with VMware is up for renewal. And they're going to have to spend a lot of money. So Cloudistics could essentially do all of that in one package.
Yes, you can. And it's funny, you just answered my question for me. And the coolest thing about that is we have a little import button in the UI. I wish I would have shown it now, where you can actually point us at the existing virtual environment, and if it's a data store that's hosted via NFS, we'll actually scan it for you, identify the VMs you want, and import them on your behalf.
Oh, very nice. I did not know that, actually.
As possible.
Yeah, and that was one of my follow-up questions, is the migration process. So that's very cool. And so I guess the last question we have time for is, for people who are interested and they like what they see with Cloudistics, what's the next step for them? What do you recommend they do?
I'd say visit our website. You can actually request a live demo right off of our website. You could email sales@cloudistics.com, and someone from the sales force will reach out to you immediately. And we could get your local account representative out to you, and we can give you a live demo. We could schedule time in our virtual lab environments where you could take it for a spin without having to bring eval equipment into your environment. And that would be a great place to start.
Excellent. And I put your contact information up there on the screen if anyone wants to contact you with further questions. Thanks so much for being on today, Carmelo. Great presentation.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. I hope you guys have a good day.
Excellent. For more information, visit Cloudistics.com. Check out the resource there on your console, available for download.